we've been monitoring this morning. The Dow implied to open down 77 points. The Nasdaq implied to open up about 15.
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. The threat and promise of artificial intelligence was one of the biggest themes of the year in American business. It's likely that it's also going to be a big theme in the case in 2026. For specifics on what to watch, we are joined by Jason Greer of Greer Consulting, founder and president, is with us this morning. Jason, thanks for being here. I wrote this down as my top theme for 2026 for, actually, I wrote it down for myself. I was just wondering what I was thinking about next year. And I said, well, either this thing continues in the AI boom and the market gets very excited and maybe it turns its interest to the users of AI, or you have the downside risk that the whole thing ends up being not what we expected and we lose a lot of jobs because of it. So tell me what I should think about all this, Jason.
Well, you should consider, when you think about artificial intelligence, look at it from this perspective, that the future is now. Artificial intelligence is legitimately embedded in everything we do, from your cell phones to even the way that schools are preparing their students for what life is going to look like when they actually graduate. I think what we're going to see in the market, we're going to see, when you had Amazon, we had Microsoft who announced layoffs last year or this year, right? You're going to see sort of the mid-sized markets, mid-sized jobs that are going to be eventually let go. But I think overall what companies are looking at is, can we afford AI, and also what is AI going to do for us, not in 2026, but also 2027 and 2028?
We have a list up right now of tech layoffs, and we have a large number at Microsoft, a large number at Amazon. But there was something that we called AI washing, where they basically said they were AI layoffs, but when you dug a little deeper, they weren't necessarily AI layoffs. Right. What's the reality here, Jason? Are companies laying off people because they're instituting AI, or are they laying off people and calling it AI because they don't want to admit to weaknesses?
I hate to take people behind the cover, but I'm going to take you behind the cover because I'm having these conversations behind closed doors, and here's what it looks like. AI for a lot of companies is just really good window washing, because what's really happening behind the scenes is people are understanding that we have a bunch of talent that unfortunately the market is going to reward us for laying people off. But on the other side of that is we lay folks off, we say that it's because of artificial intelligence, and then we rehire you for half of what we paid you. So it's one of those things that artificial intelligence in some sectors, let's be real, some sectors people are laying people off because of artificial intelligence and automation, because that's the reality. But on the other side, it's, business is not, people are not in business because they just want to keep people. People are in business in order to move product, to make money for their shareholders. And one of the best way to make money for their shareholders is to do what the market rewards, and that's to lay people off, unfortunately.
In the industries that I cover, I mean, we're seeing the disruption in travel and a lot of skepticism about whether, online travel agents are going to be put out of business by ChatGPT deciding where you should go and what you should do. I have seen no bigger disruptor than in the insurance industry, where AI can go in and do so much of the underwriting, the risk evaluation, claims, and the administrative tasks. And in fact, we heard Chubb saying they plan to lay off 20% of the workforce over the next 3 years or so as they start to incorporate more and more technology. What do you do with all those people who lose their jobs? I mean, at some point, if you're an insurance agent or a claims adjuster, where else can you go and work? What kind of reskilling can you get?
That's the biggest challenge that we're seeing. You have Stanford University that just announced that, and I don't pretend to be a tech person, so please understand, and please forgive me if I butcher these terms, but you have students who are graduating who could do code. And, they were the people going to Amazon. They were the people going to Microsoft 3 years ago, making a bunch of money. But now what they're finding is that those jobs are essentially being done by AI, and there's really no need for them. I think what happens, and becomes a generational perspective. If you're young, what a Stanford University is doing is that they're actively encouraging their students, stay an additional year, stay an additional 2 years, get your master's degree, retool your skill set so that you're ready to go into the market. If you happen to be, look, I'm 51 years old, so I'm looking at a world in which that looks a lot different today than it did when I graduated from college in 1996. So I think it's one of those things that if you're an older employee, you have to take a step back and ask, What do I think the market is going to reward? Not today, but
are
tomorrow.
you ever skeptical of that, though? Because I'm just wondering about academia.
Sure.
And how slowly it moves to adapt to new industries and new opportunities.
Right.
What's 2 years in school going to do when things are changing so fast? Whatever degree you have today, by next year, it could be obsolete.
Well,
but
that
misses the point.
Sure.
I'm sorry, that really misses the
please.
point. The point is not what you learn in school. The point is learning to learn in school. And there's a reason why, and this really, it really pisses me off, this anti-college mentality that's out there now, because people misunderstand what people are learning in college, which is the reason why people who have college degrees have lower unemployment. In part, it's connections. In part, it's what they learn. But more importantly, it's learning to adapt. And when you're in college and you go from English class to math class to trig class to history, you learn to adapt, and that's going to be a microcosm of what you're going to face in the world. I'm sorry for pontificating, Jason, but now I'm off my pedestal.
No, you're legitimately saying what I was going to say. Look, my father, Dr. Jerome Greer, very proud he's my father. He said this to me when I went to college. He said, Jason, you're not going to college because you want to get a job. You're going to college to learn how to think. Here's the thing. When we look at the present, when we look at the future, the president of the future is not going to be owned by those people who just want to get a job. The president of the future is going to be owned by those folks who are actively thinking, what can I contribute to this world? And I think that's the beautiful thing about college. My daughter's graduating from Butler University.
But even the process of thinking is significantly different than when we were in college.
Yeah, but you got to think more. Here's the thing. The injustice that's being done to young people right now is telling them to come take this factory job or take this job that we will automate away from you at the soonest possibility as we get a robot or a 6-axis machine tool to do it. We will take your job away as soon as possible. And that's what's being told to a lot of the young folks. And they'll get good jobs. They'll get some jobs, and they'll pay a decent amount. But when they commoditize it or the price of the commodity that they're providing falls, they will be out of a job like nothing else.
What I'm suggesting is if Princeton, what was the university that said stay a year or two
Stanford
longer?
University.
Okay.
Stanford University.
If they're saying stay another year, it's not that you're saying there's no use for college. What you're saying is just stay put and watch the world around you from the safe halls of academia. Watch it unfold and change in ways that I'm not sure that you would benefit from another, not any, but another year or two in college when 5 years ago, they were sure that the jobs that would survive the future were coding and anything having to do with human biology. And I'm not, coding is now being done by AI. So it's not true. The way that we're thinking about it is changing so rapidly. If we put those companies back up again and you look at the job layoffs that are coming, some of those are engineers who literally created the AI systems that are now going to take over their job. They are responsible for replacing themselves. Can they go on and do other things? Yeah, sure.
So it ever was. I mean, the idea that there's automation. Jason, I guess you're sort of out in the middle of this conversation here, but do jump in. I mean, it's like it's not a surprise that tech companies are automating things and bringing technology to bear and replacing jobs. This was always the case. And I guess I'm a little more optimistic about the outlook here because having used AI, I can use it. It makes me more productive, but it just means that I need to work harder and smarter and figure out how to use the tool and move on like anything else.
Let's talk about innovation because look, we have Google, some folks that are in their basement, right, in their garage, and they created Google. We have Microsoft today because some folks sat around in the garage and created Microsoft. There's something to be said when we talk about an inflection point. There's the intellectual pursuit, and then there's desperation. And when intelligence meets desperation, we create innovation, and then that's what we're going to have. For that Stanford student who's sitting back for another 2 years getting his or her their graduate degree, who's to say that they're not going to look around and say, look, if the market is not going to reward me for X, then maybe I need to pivot and do Y. My daughter graduates in 2028, and I'm telling you that the conversation that I'm having with my daughter coming out of Butler University in 2028 is a lot different than the conversation my parents had with me coming out in 1996. But it does not mean that just because my daughter has a degree in something that the market is not going to reward her today, that it won't reward her tomorrow. I tend to lead toward, because I love college, I love thinking, I tend to lean toward that automation is here and automation is impacting us, but who's to say it's going to look like that in 3 years? And I think that's a beautiful thing about the ability to pivot, is that if you pivot correctly, you can land in a gold mine.
Yeah, I did the same thing, actually. I went and got a master's degree when it was the recession because there weren't any jobs, and I figured you might as well just, postpone the inevitable for a year and go to more school. Which brings me to the point of, all of this job discussion is happening against the backdrop of a growing economy. And I'm curious how that changes if there is some sort of recession, if there is some sort of drastic need by companies to kind of take quick actions, replace their employees with AI in order to be more efficient in a much quicker way. I mean, is it easier for companies to kind of just like ho-hum, we can keep our employees, AI will be a nice tool for them, but then if something bad happens with the economy, that may change pretty quickly?
Well, here's what companies are looking back. If 4 years ago it was the year of the employee, now effectively it's the year of the employer, because there's so much available talent. So I think that employers, the conversations I'm having with employers is like this. I'm actively encouraging my clients to keep their employees to the best of their ability, because look, when people are talking about AI, so we have the AI principle, but AI is expensive. When you have Microsoft, when you have Amazon that announces layoffs because of AI, they're making those announcements because they can afford to do so. And if they get it wrong, guess what we do? We just pull people back into the mix. When you're a mid-level employer, you're catching a lot of grief from your stockholders who are saying, what about AI? What about AI? So you're going to make those announcements, and we'll see that in 2026, where you will have some mid-level companies make announcements saying that we're laying off because of artificial intelligence. But watch behind the scenes, because those people that they lay off today, they're going to bring back tomorrow because they're going to need to do so.
All right, Jason, thank you for joining us this morning and engaging in this very interesting and somewhat contentious conversation.
No, I don't. It's just an interesting conversation. I have a lot.